Hey everybody, JP here once again, and today I'm going to take you on the deep dive that I did into the Back in Black snare drum and drum recording in general. I recently listened to a great interview with engineer Tony Platt, who is the man behind the boards for that album. And the more he talked about some of the things they did, both in the recording and mixing stages, the more I wanted to try it myself and see if I could come close to a match. And then I was really happy with it, so I figured I'd share it with everyone here. Little background, that album was recorded most likely with a 5x14 Sonar snare drum, I believe brass, although it was dampened quite a bit because there's not much ring on it. The drum, I found a multi-track with a similar drum, and the close mic is definitely dampened, which we'll hear in a moment. In the room, there's a little bit of a ring to it, and that actually works well in the room, especially since we were looking for a little slapback like they sort of had going on from the Compass Point studio room that they recorded in down in Nassau, Bahamas. Compass Point was an awesome studio. I never made it there myself, but I talked to many people who did. I believe it closed in about 2010, sadly, like so many other great rooms. But yeah, Compass Point was a destination for, several decades. And I think it was pretty new when AC/DC was there. So they found the best spot in the live room, particularly for the snare sound. So it was recorded through an MCI console onto an MCI 24-track tape machine. Tony wasn't a big fan of the console. He didn't really use any console EQ. It was tracked pretty much without any EQ or compression, according to him. It was, however, mixed at Electric Lady Studios in New York on a wonderful Neve 8078 console, which would have had 31105 modules. Those are 4-band EQs, Class AB output, electronically identical to the 1081 modules, just with the blue and silver look like they switched to in the late 70s. It also would have had 322/64 compressors, which might have been the best compressor modules Neve ever made. They are absolutely fantastic. Closest I could get were the Lindell 2254 compressors. So I'm using them on a couple things here, kick snare and on the drum bus, because they are just fantastic. That's a great plug-in too, by the way. Very affordable and sounds fantastic. So anyway, I do have this loop going the whole time for reference. So we will be coming back to that quite a bit. And the track I found here, the tempo and the feel is a little closer to like Shoot to Thrill in terms of its vibe, but otherwise it was the best snare I could find to work with. So let's get to it. So that's our drum. Obviously, I've got a lot of stuff going on here, but actually, let me kill everything and we'll introduce things one by one. So that's our snare drum that we're starting with here. And if we go step by step through the process, first I put the 2254 on it to tighten it up a bit. What a great compressor. These really are so fantastic. A little Shep 73 for EQ. Really not much at all, just boosting a little 1.6. That's the punch. That's the, that's your knuckle into the palm of your hand. That's what we're looking for there. And then this is kind of a Brendan O'Brien thing that I've been doing lately, and I absolutely love. Pultec on the snare. Adding a little 100 hertz to the bottom. That would be a shelf, and adding a shelf starting at 3K to the top. It's not a huge difference when you scroll through there, but something about this. Conventional wisdom would tell me that a Pultec might actually soften the snare drum attack, and it does the absolute opposite. It just puts it that much more in your face. So now we can talk about some of this trickery we have going on here. Well, not trickery, but you know what I'm saying. So I've got, well, first, I've got the Sound City plugin as a room here. Little pre-delay on it. Actually, might brighten that up a little bit too. And I've got a little bit of compression on it. And a little bit of the live chamber. Actually, I might turn that down a little now that I hear it. And then we've got the good old Valhalla in plate mode. And that's, if you listen closely to you could hear that certain ambience from a plate kind of doing its thing on there. And I've also got some pre-delay happening on there. Now, another thing that's happening here, I've got pre-fade bus 2, and that's going to this SSL E channel. For the gate, I am sidechain, I've bus 2 going to the key input, sidechain input of the gate. Why did I do that? This gated send so what this is a copy of the room mic. Stereo room mic. Here's what the room mic sounds like by itself. Not bad. I've got a little compression on that too. But what I really wanted was just that higher pitched ringing snare for the sole purpose of driving reverb. So I am gating it, and I am keying the gate off the close mic snare. Without it, see, the room mic's a little too busy to get the snare alone out of it. So we're keying that gate, and that is going directly to bus 3, which is the Valhalla. See? So that's giving that higher pitched ringing snare being just driven directly into the Valhalla, along with the close mic snare. So that's all happening right there. Other thing we have going on here, bus 1 is the Eventide H910. I labeled it 949. That's funny. But it's actually the 910, which is what they would have used back then. And it's pre-fade so we could hear it. And this is what Tony said. It was pitched down to 93 with the feedback turned up. And if you notice, hear how it mistriggers every now and then? See, there's one. So, no, Tony said that this mistriggering drove them nuts during the mixing of the album. And the really funny thing about it, and the reason that I sampled the loop I did, is if you listen to it closely, hear how one drum sounds different than the other? Some people think that's a flam. It's actually the H910 triggering on one of the hits, but not on the other hit. So, when I listened to that really closely, it cracked me up, and I had to make sure that I looped a bar that really exhibited that because of how hysterical it is. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are saying, why didn't they just use a sample, and trigger it every time? Well, I believe this was recorded in the spring of 1980. You were still 2 to 3 years away from sample replacement being the thing that it became in the 80s. The AMS 1580 delay was available, but I'm not sure if the earliest versions had sampling and triggering in it. That they both might have come later, and that was sort of a modular unit inside where you could upgrade it and add things to it. Almost like people like to say no two are the same these days when you find them. So that was really the unit that started the sampling frenzy a couple years later. And it was Mutt Lange producing. Pyromania by Def Leppard was really, that was one of the albums. I think they actually used a Fairlight for it on there, but still the AMS 1580 cost a lot less than a Fairlight, and the fact that it had a trigger input made it really, really popular in studios. But yeah, again, still 2 to 3 years away from that being the standard. So that's why you weren't using a trigger for this back then. That's why you sort of had to live with the fact that 1 out of every 10 snare hits was going to be a misfire with this thing. Let's see if we get another one. But anyway, you get the idea. So I am using this to drive reverb as well. See, without it, it really contributes a lot to that sound. And for those playing along at home, I'm also detuning the toms a little, just like our tom detune video, but I'm using the H910 for it. Same thing, I'm down a fifth. Down, we were doing 650 on the 949 unit, so we're down 65 on these. The toms are a little wimpy on this drum track. Plus there's 4 of them, and AC/DC would never stand for that. One thing worth listening to as well, the kick drum. The kick drum is a little basketball-y on the original. And the funny thing was, this is more of a modern kick drum. So I kind of had to EQ it a bit to bring out some of that basketball-y, boosting some 700 there, boosting some 220, things I wouldn't normally do on a kick. But learned from listening to Tony Platt that he actually hates kick drums with holes in them, and he hates sticking mics inside them. He thinks it stops being a drum as soon as you put a hole in that front head, and he would rather mic it outside. So the Back in Black kick drum, I think it was probably a U47 right outside of the front head on that original, and it's tough to argue with. So yeah, I was really happy with this, and I thought I might share the process I went through to get it, and I hope you all enjoyed it as well. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. I want your feedback, and I want suggestions for more of these. Any other ideas out there, throw them at me. I love it. All right, thanks guys.